just saw in the middle of the country a giant chemical fireball, 100-foot flames, and very few people asking questions about what led up to this.
This is the most important thing you are going to watch today. The disastrous story of what happened in East Palestine, Ohio, is a classic but very alarming example of two things: corporate corruption and government inaction. Hello, and welcome to The Gaze. Today we're going to be talking about East Palestine, what exactly happened, who is to blame, and what you can do about it. Here are the details. On February 3rd, a train carrying Class 2 level hazardous chemicals derailed in the small town of East Palestine, Ohio, due to the outdated rail braking technologies, leading to the immediate evacuation of 2,000 residents in the surrounding area. The 150-car train, owned and operated by the Norfolk Southern Rail Company, leaked massive amounts of vinyl chloride and phosgene, two known carcinogens, into the air and water through the derailment and through a controlled burn. Shortly after making national news, the rail company decided to donate a measly $25,000 to the nearby 5,000 residents for the damage that they caused. No, not $25,000 per resident, $25,000 overall. When you break it down, that's $5 per resident. That's like the corporation saying, yeah, I'm so sorry that we totally just poisoned your town and maybe gave you cancer, but here's $5. Go get yourself a nice Subway, $5 footlong. And to make matters worse, the corporation had the audacity to skip an organized town hall by residents, citing that there was a growing physical threat from outside parties. What cowards! And the announcement came 2 hours before the scheduled event, leaving poisoned residents on their own to deal with this horrible disaster. Now, more than 2 weeks after this toxic train wreck, residents have reported a growing number of ailments, from rashes to nausea to trouble breathing. One resident who lives just 900 feet from the site of the wreck said, quote, "Our throats are sore. We're coughing a lot now. My son, his eyes matted shut." That's terrifying. Yet spokespeople from the Norfolk Southern Rail Company insisted that there is nothing to worry about and that the air and water are safe. Well, then why are so many people getting sick, huh? Explain that. One resident, Isla Antoniazzi, I hope I said that correctly, and her family returned to their house less than a mile away from the crash site the day after the evacuation orders were lifted. And in her words, quote, "But the next day, when they woke up, they weren't themselves," end quote. She's discussing her children. She said, quote, "My oldest son had a rash on his face. The youngest did too, but not as bad. The 2-year-old was holding her eye and complaining that her eye was hurting. She was very lethargic, so I took them back to my parents' home." That's so terrifying when your children are sick like this from a horrible, toxic train wreck. Yikes. Also, to add insult to injury, there are multiple reports of dead animals like fish and chickens in the surrounding area, and even farmers are concerned with trying to sell their corn and their crop to nearby markets. The latest egregious action by the company is the $1,000 inconvenience fees that they're offering to local residents who have been poisoned by this disaster. An inconvenience fee. Now that's an understatement. That's like $1,000 is literally a ambulance trip to the hospital. So that's like the company being like, yeah, we'll give you $1,000 and an inconvenience fee so that we can pay for your ambulance to send you to die in a hospital from cancer. One local attorney, Michael O'Shea, is skeptical though of the intentions of these payments, because to receive a check, the residents have to sign a form. And O'Shea, the attorney, believes that Norfolk Southern could be using this form in the future to claim, quote, "That's payment in full for everything," end quote. And to make matters worse, there are likely scammers going door to door, pretending to be the company, preying off of residents, offering these $1,000 payments. It's really, really disgusting because it's horrible scammers preying off of people's really, really desperate and diabolical situations. As if this story wasn't awful enough, another Norfolk Southern train carrying hazardous chemicals derailed in Michigan a few days ago. And according to the Bureau of Transportation Statistics, this is just one of the expected 1,700 train derailments that they have yearly. We have 1,700 train derailments a year? Good God. But let's get back to East Palestine, Ohio, and the disaster that occurred there. What is the government doing to hold Norfolk Southern, the company, accountable? What is the government doing to prevent and mitigate disasters like this from happening in the future? Nothing. The government is doing nothing. Surely the Secretary of Transportation is doing something about it, whoever that is. Oh wait, that's Mr. Mayor of Whoville himself, Secretary Pete Buttigieg, who was caught in some pretty salacious and egregious Twitter drama a few days ago. It is so good. His own department literally threw him under the bus. Or I should rather say threw him under the train. That might be more appropriate. Take a look. In a Twitter thread posted more than a week after Norfolk Southern's fiery train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, Secretary Pete Buttigieg indicated that he cannot reinstate an Obama-enacted, Trump-repealed law requiring some trains carrying hazardous materials to replace their Civil War-era braking systems with newer electronically controlled pneumatic brake technology. Secretary Pete Buttigieg says in a tweet, "We are constrained by law on some areas of rail regulation, like the braking rule withdrawn by the Trump administration in 2018 because of a law passed by Congress in 2015. But we are using the powers to do what we have to keep people safe." But then here's the gag. His own transportation department tweets out, "This is flat out false. There are no constraints, but as DOT has made clear, we will look into the NTSB investigation to take action necessary to ensure accountability and improve safety." Oof, yikes, totally thrown under the bus or train. Poor Petey. And when Secretary Pete Buttigieg was asked about the braking rule, the spokesperson said that it would be, quote, "difficult to reinstate the rule in its previous configuration," end quote, given the previous legal challenges. The spokesperson for Pete Buttigieg said proposing a new rule would require performing a new cost-benefit analysis, though they acknowledge that the department has the ability to prepare that analysis. I don't know, crazy idea. Then you do the analysis. Do your job. Nothing prevents Pete Buttigieg from using his existing rulemaking authority to expand the definition of a, quote, "high-hazard flammable train," end quote, to cover trains like the one in Ohio. Under the existing limited definition, the Ohio train, which was carrying 5 tanker cars of vinyl chloride, a Class 2 flammable gas and known carcinogen, was exempted from the classification's more stringent safety regulations. Oh, but don't worry, handsome Pete Buttigieg is on the case, and he's finally doing something about it. What did he do? He wrote a strongly worded letter. Ooh, And ABC News has called it a sharply worded letter. Now that ought to work. That ought to get that corporation. Excuse me, do your job. Regulate them. Punish them. Change the system. Norfolk Southern's bound to change their ways now that they received a sharply worded letter from Secretary Pete Buttigieg. That ought to do it. Like, girl, if they wanted to change, they would have. They had 150 years to update their train infrastructure to newer brakes. But guess what? They didn't want to. You really think a strongly worded letter is gonna change their minds? Good God, girl, get a grip. Hey, Pete, Honey Bear, I have a bright idea. How about you fine them, punish them, regulate them? Do something to change the system, hold them accountable. You as a gay person should be better than this. Look, it gives me no pleasure to say these things because I'm a Democrat, I'm a progressive, and I'm also very LGBTQ if you cannot tell from my voice. And I'm very upset with the way that Pete Buttigieg is handling his position as Secretary of Transportation because he is the highest ranking LGBTQ government official. And he's also in the public eye with the likes of Anthony DeVolder, George Santos, Katara, whoever that person is. Like, girl, LGBTQ people need to be better than this. Now, for all the Republicans watching and laughing at this, if there are any, y'all deserve just as much blame, if not more, because it was your orange Oompa Loompa daddy, deity, Donald Trump, that repealed this law that would have prevented what happened in East Palestine, Ohio in the first place. And it doesn't help when you have insane right-wing news hosts like Laura Ingraham blaming diversity initiatives for the Ohio train derailment. That is absurd. She goes by saying, this is what happens when you prioritize diversity and equity over competence and experience. America just ends up with a cabinet filled with nincompoops. Who uses that word anymore? Nincompoop. This blaming diversity garbage is just a distraction from the real issue, which is the government's inability to punish and regulate the industry that it oversees. Without regulations, companies will do anything that they can to make more money. For instance, did you all know that there were only 3 people on this 150-car train? Yeah, 3 people for that much cargo. The company's doing whatever it can to minimize however many staff there are and how much cargo they can pack on a train. Screw safety, doesn't matter. What's gonna make the most profit for their shareholders, their company executives, what's gonna help their stock price? By the way, how you're like thinking, well, how does this make more money? They wanna do whatever they can to minimize the amount of staff so they don't have to pay them. There was 1 conductor, 1 trainer, and 1 trainee. And making it 150 cars of cargo, if you can pack as much cargo onto 1 train, maybe you can minimize the number of trains that you have to do, making it less expensive to then run trains different places. So the companies like this, without regulation, will do anything that they can to make an extra buck, regardless of safety, regardless if disasters like this happen. And the government isn't doing anything to regulate the train industry. There are now reports that 6 different environmental organizations, including the Sierra Club and Earth Justice, are threatening to sue Pete Buttigieg and take legal action if nothing happens, which good, they should. But also don't think for a second that these companies do not have the money to update their Civil War era breaking technologies to newer, more efficient and safer technology. Because just last year, Norfolk Southern, the rail company that had the disaster in East Palestine, Ohio, Norfolk Southern bought back $10 billion worth of stock, which when you do that, you reward your shareholders, you reward company executives and CEOs. And if you didn't know what a stock buyback is, you're not alone. Just watch this next clip as David Schuster from the Young Turks explains what a stock buyback is. It's helpful. Go take a look.
For people who don't know what a stock buyback is, if a company, say, buys up their own stock, takes some of their money and borrows some money to buy their own stock, their stock price essentially artificially goes up. And what does that do? It gives the executives more compensation because of more bonuses. It gives more money to the investors. There used to be a time when stock buybacks were frowned upon, were somewhat illegal, and you'd have to take, say, $10 billion and invest in your actual infrastructure or your research and development or things that would make you more productive and more efficient and safer for your consumers. But it's all the rage now in this American capitalism of 2023. No, instead of actually investing in your company's productivity or safety, no, you invest in your stocks so you can artificially raise the stock price and raise the quarterly dividends and give yourself, if you're an executive, more money. It's outrageous.
So the company has the money. They just aren't doing anything to update their safety infrastructure. And without the government regulating them, imposing fines, and mandating higher safety protocols, why would they go out of their way to update their safety protocols and train infrastructure if they don't have to? Like they're not going to willingly say, yeah, we're gonna decrease profits for the sake of safety. No, these companies have a fiduciary responsibility to make as much profit, screw safety. They're not going to just promote safety out of the kindness of their hearts. Girl, that's not how that works. But what's so sad is that this is just the latest town that is a symptom of a larger problem of corporate corrupted capitalism. It also reminds me of what happened in Flint when this is different because East Palestine is a predominantly white community, but in Flint, Michigan, it was a predominantly black community where the Michigan state government decided to literally deliberately take steps to switch over the town's water source as a way to save $5 million. In East Palestine, though, this disaster, it wasn't intentional, but regardless, the damage is already done. It's negatively affecting a poor but also very white community. And we need to be talking about all of these forms of ecological terrorism. And it doesn't matter. Like, pollution does not discriminate based on race. But we also do need to acknowledge that there is systemic environmental racism towards non-white communities. That's not to discount that. But we also need to be talking about what's happening in East Palestine, because it is a perfect example of corporate corruption and government inaction as well. And we all need to be talking about it more and doing something about it. One action step that you can take to help the residents of East Palestine is to sign the 2 petitions that I created and put in the description for this video. The first one is demanding that Norfolk Southern pay $500 million to the town of East Palestine, Ohio, and their residents. Make the company pay, literally punish them. And then the second one, I don't know what that finger action was there. The second one is to hold the government more accountable and actually force them to do something. This one is demand Secretary Pete Buttigieg actually regulate the train industry with new mandates. So please go and sign those petitions. It literally it's in the description right there. You totally want to do it. I usually don't do petitions, so this is kind of a new thing for me. Definitely share them wide. And that is all I have for you today. Thank you for joining me on The Gaze. You can find more of me on The Young Turks' TYT's The Breakdown, which is also in the description of this video. You can also find more of me on my TikTok, which is pretty awesome. So it's also in the description of this video. There's a lot in the description. Go spelunking. Also, what do you think of what happened in East Palestine? How are you feeling about the corporate corruption and government inaction in Ohio? Please put your comments down below and your thoughts down there. Also, again, please go and sign the 2 petitions that are in the description link. And most importantly, if you made it to the end of this video, first of all, thank you. I'm still new to making these kinds of videos, so I seriously appreciate every single one of you that have stayed thus far. I love you. But also, don't forget to smash that subscribe button and comment below. And just remember that you're beautiful, you're loved, you're valid, you're strong, and you're fierce. Okay? Have a wonderful day.